Hi everyone, I wanted to hop on here and give you a bit of a video demonstration on how to make an oak or wood that's varnished piece of furniture, how to change the stain or the color of it. I've had quite a few different questions, and sometimes I think just a visual is the best way to explain it. So the first step when you have an oak surface that has a varnish or a wood surface that has a varnish, you want to give it a light scuff. Obviously, the whole point of fusion mineral paint and stains are that there's very minimal prep required, so you can change the color of it without having to strip it. Stripping agents are really harsh. There are a lot of chemicals and they're not good for you. They're not safe. Definitely not safe to use indoors. And this time of year, I don't know where you are, but where we are, it's still stinking cold outside, even though it's middle of April. So I wouldn't want to be working with that stuff indoors either. So the fusion products don't require stripping, so that saves us that really unhealthy and unsafe step. So what I do want to do is just rough off the surface lightly with some sandpaper. The reason I'm doing that is because you sometimes have some loose varnish, and simply I just want to get rid of any loose, flaking, drying up varnish. Get that off of here so that everything I put on can stick to a surface that is not going anywhere. So do that first. That's step one. Okay, so as you can see, it's not a crazy amount of sanding. It's fairly minimal. I've just kind of created a dusty surface, and now I want to go and wipe it down with a damp cloth. And if you are doing countertop, tabletop, kitchen cupboards, anything that there might be grease, oil, stains, or spills on it, I really recommend using a TSP cleaner. That's going to break down those oil products, so you can remove that off the surface. So go ahead and do that, just wipe it down. So I've got that all wiped up. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually do 3 different products on this piece, showing you kind of the different looks or finishes that you can get, because some people want it just stained darker. Some people prefer that sort of faux grain look, and some people like the real rustic barn board look. So I'm gonna try and do 3, maybe 4 different samples. We'll see how far I get. So I'm gonna start with painting a surface. So this is something I do on a surface that is too worse for wear. So if you have something that has some really deep like burn marks or water stains that you just can't sand through, staining it, because staining is sort of a translucent layer, you're still going to see those marks, okay? Unless you go really, really, really super dark, you're still going to see a burn mark or a really bad stain or something, because you're not stripping it, you're not sanding down past that. So this is an option to your piece to still make it look like a faux wood grain, but to cover up some of those stains. So I'm going to take just a neutral color. You can do it with a beigey color, you can do it with a deeper taupe color, or you can do it with a gray as well. So I'm just using Cathedral Taupe. It's just a beigey color, and if I don't love it, I'll just paint a new coat on top. But that we're giving it actually a solid base for it to be on, for the stain to go on top of, which is, you might be thinking, what, you're gonna put a stain on top of the paint? Yes, we can put stain on top of paint. That's the amazing thing with fusion mineral paints, is it works quite well actually. And my paint's gotten a little thick because it's been sitting in a jar for a little while on my shelf. So if that happens to you and you've got paint that has started to dry up, we do have a product called Fusion Extender, and it's just a clear product you add to your paint to extend the life of it, thin it out a little bit, makes it go a little further. So I've got that section painted in a solid color. It's not a perfect paint job, but it doesn't need to be because we're going to be doing lots of things on top. The second section I'm going to do is I'm going to show you how I can use Fusion Stain and Finishing Oil by itself, just applied directly onto the wood, and how it will deepen the color slightly. So the Stain and Finishing Oil actually contains a little bit of resin, which is what dries nice and hard, but it has a lot of color pigmentation, which you will see the difference between it and when I jump to the gel stain. So you'll see the difference there when I mean color pigmentation. So sometimes I use a brush, sometimes I use a sponge. So today I'm just going to use a brush, and I'm going to apply the stain on this section. As you can see, it's, well, I'll lift up the camera in a sec. You can see it's sitting on top of the surface, so it looks a little bit streaky, and most people might panic at this point. But I'm going to leave that there for 5 minutes or so. I'm just going to bring this up here so you can see. So you can see it is definitely kind of streaky, but I'm going to let this dry slightly, not fully dry, obviously. Okay, and then the gel stain I'm going to apply on the bottom. So gel stain is made up of a lot more resin content and a lot less color pigmentation. So that means it's going to dry really hard, almost like a polyurethane kind of finish. So it is an oil product. It does smell a little bit stronger. I find the Stain and Finishing Oil, it doesn't bother me to use inside at all. You don't smell a lot of it. The gel stain is a higher content of resin, and the oil smell is much stronger. So it's your call if you want to use it indoors. I use it indoors all the time because I do have a place where I can crack a door easily and window and open it and ventilate it. So as you can see, it's a much thicker product, and I'm going to apply it directly on to the wood. Now you can leave it as thick as you want. I would rather build the layers slowly than lay it on really thick. And the reason for that is because I want it to dry properly between the layers. So just apply it, wipe it. It's kind of a sticky product. I do recommend wearing gloves, even though I didn't put them on today. Whenever you're staining, always go with the grain. That way you don't have contrasting lines. Okay. So I'm gonna bring this up here. This is the gel stain, one coat of it, and you can see I've left some of the original oak color there just for comparison. So I've put it on a thin coat. It did take the color darker, which is a good start. But now I want to go back and show you this Stain and Finishing Oil I put on. Now I'm coming back and I'm wiping it back. So this is after having left it on for 4 or 5 minutes. And as you can see, it too is leaving the stain, or leaving the wood much darker. Okay, so that is deepened stain as well. So if you want to know the colors, this is the Stain and Finishing Oil in Cappuccino, and this is the gel stain in Dark Double Espresso. The gel stain looks really shiny, but it does dry to a matte finish, which I will show you that shortly. Okay, so I just flipped my board around. Now I've got my painted side here in front of me. I want you to show you a couple things you can do on top of paint to sort of make it look like a wood grain. So the first thing I want to show you is how you can put the stain and finishing oil directly over top of your painted surface. So I took the cappuccino. Now I'm not using a lot, I'm actually going to dab a bit of it off, and I'm just basically going with the grain, kind of making it streaky. Now I could leave it like that. I'll show you here what it looks like. I could leave it like that, don't love it, but most of the time I would recommend you just rub it in, and that's actually, oh, that's really bright. Focus. Going to give it sort of a dirtied, weathered look. The other thing, just gotta get my brush. Okay, the other thing I can do is play around with some dry brushing. So I've got this beigey color here, and when I say dry brushing, what I mean is I'm dipping my brush into paint, and then I am dabbing a lot of it off onto a paper towel or a rag, so that my brush looks quite dry. And I'm just feather dusting, basically. We all know what a feather duster is, and you just are gonna kind of lightly brush it, and it will bring out any of the grains in your painting and in your painting coat, and that is really important then why you want to brush with the grain. And I can show you this one right here. This is why you want to brush with the grain. I did here and I didn't here, and if I dry brush over top, I am definitely seeing that spot, not what I love. But this part here gives you an idea of dry brushing a dark paint over top of the light paint. What I can also do is play around with the colors a little bit, dipping it in a different color now, dabbing a lot of it off. Probably would have been better if I had switched brushes because I have some of the lighter. And this is coming in with yet a different color. So dry brushing really, you get to just play around with what the color and finished product looks like, basically by playing around with the colors you apply. So more or less, totally up to you. I actually think I want a bit more of the dark. But this is all on a base color, and the reason for that, if you remember what I had said, the reason for that was because the wood was just not salvageable. It really wasn't a nice enough finish to carry. Okay, so I also wanted to show you just dry brushing on a gray background instead. So I dry brushed some dark gray along with some raw silk, and just playing around with that, you can get kind of that barn board effect. Another trick is to scuff and sand. If you don't love this really rustic, this is definitely a more rustic finish, so I will not say that, or I will say that this isn't for the person that really wants that wood grain, natural wood grain look. So this is definitely more rustic and barn board looking. So yeah, these are sort of your painted barn board look finish, just using different shades of paint, a base color and a mid-tone, and then a lighter and a darker dry brushing technique. This one we used a stain on top of the paint that gave that darker brown color, and same idea, very rustic. You could do this on a tabletop and then seal it with a clear I do recommend the gel stain in a clear. It is a nice hard finish. So I'm back coating my stain sides with a second coat of stain, just to show you how we're getting this wood a darker finish. So if this is what you're going for to restain your dining table, lots of people are really loving the dark stain top with the painted legs. I think that looks fantastic. So this is getting coat number 2, and as you can see, the color is getting much darker. This is the stain and finishing oil, and I'm going to put it on there. I could leave this to dry, but I will wipe it back after a few minutes, just giving it some time to absorb, and then look back, wipe it back a bit, just so it dries properly. And then you don't actually have to seal that with anything else because it's stain and finishing oil all in one. If you really like the finish, the hard finish of the gel stain, then I would recommend the patina, which is a clear in the gel stain. So I'm gonna do one more layer of my gel stain as well, just to show you how dark we can get it. So this is, because it is so sticky, you just sort of want to work with it with the grain, and fairly consistently. Like, don't walk away from your project in the middle. If the doorbell's ringing, just leave it or holler. It's the type of thing where you don't just want to walk away from it, because it will start to dry fast and then get kind of gummy on you. So just work at it till you're done your coat. And you can do as many coats as you want. Obviously, if you do lots of coats, it's going to get darker and darker with each one. Ooh. I'm finding it a little bit hard to do the top of a cabinet door because I have this section here that goes in a different direction. The grain goes in a different direction. So, a little finicky, but we'll just play with it. And we'll let this dry. I'm gonna wipe back that first stain now, and just so you can see, yeah. And it's actually, it's not getting a whole lot darker. You can see it's actually wiping back a lot, and maybe it would take letting it sit a little bit longer or just leaving this on its own to dry completely like that, which is probably what I'm gonna do because I want it really dark. So yeah, that's your options for the stain. So this was that painted board, and I actually threw the gel stain, the dark espresso, over top of it, and I love how that turned out. That would be a beautiful surface for a tabletop. And remember, this was a painted surface. It has no natural wood grain showing through. This is just the streaking of the dry brushing effect and the gel stain on top, which turned out pretty fabulous. Sometimes that's all it takes, guys, is just trial and error, try some different products, different techniques, until you get the look you want. So yeah, I'm really liking that. So I did want to show you the difference between the regular stain and the gel stain finish. The regular stain, it dries nice and flat. It is a sealed finish, so you don't have to worry about not being able to wipe it. You can totally wipe it. It's sealed all in one. This is the gel stain, and you can see it's quite a lot more of a harder finish, a sheen to it. This is just one coat of the gray. This is 2 coats. That's on just raw wood. So technically you could do that on your oak cabinet and get a bit grayer as well. So I hope everybody, that answers some of your questions on the different finishes that you can get to stain and paint, different ways to change up your oak. So hopefully that helps. If you have any questions, let me know.